I used to think that the deadliest thing in the woods were rattlesnakes and possibly a panther. Now I know better. This story took place this past summer in the southern United States. The woman that I work for is stupid rich. Her family are proper southern blue bloods with money that reaches back to the pre-slavery days. Where I actually work is an old plantation house that sits on 15,000 acres straddling two state lines and bordered by large state parks on two sides. A large chunk of mostly untamed land. Horses are my boss's passion. No other way to say it. She has numerous amounts of horses and devotes hundreds of acres to the beast, complete with large expensive barns and all the works. A way that she earns a decent amount of money is offering hunting packages, or trail rides to people. People can pay to come see deer on the property, quail hunt, and fox hunting. All three animals she keeps on site. Permits for everything so she can control the population on hand. It's quite a mind-boggling operation, and might sound strange at first. Anyway, I'm a college-age female, and I got involved in all this when I used to compete in horse shows and met my current boss, whom later became my riding coach. I help assist with various activities that I won't bore you with. One of said activities is on-off hunting weekend to check riding trails for fallen branches, knocked over jumps, etc. They're also used to check the large deer fence border, the kind that you see on the side of highways, that are 12 feet high with barbed wire on top. We check for holes and make sure all the gates are padlocked and undisturbed. My boss is extremely paranoid of people with nefarious intentions. The afternoon that the event happened, I was riding with one of my co-workers, Brandon, and we were checking the fence line that bordered a state park. It was around 7 a.m. when we left out. It would take a large chunk of the day to ride the L-shaped border. The entire property is like a large rectangle. It's late summer, so fairly hot even early in the morning, but still wonderful weather with bright green foliage. We kept the long brisk pace, but not hurried as we caught up with gossip and just relaxed. Around 11 a.m. we came where the back of the edge of the property was. There is a gate complete with padlock. Checking it, we found nothing out of order and continued on our way. The next landmark is an old tobacco barn that hasn't been used in about 50 years. We chose this place to eat a quick lunch and feed the horses their snack as well. After we hitched the horses and I fed mine her obligatory peanut butter sandwich, we walked up to check out the barn. On the back side of the barn in a clearing is a small camping trailer, the kind that is red and white and pulled behind a truck. As I was idly looking at it, I thought I saw a flash of something shiny on the roof of the camper. I called Brandon's attention to it, and we decided to walk over. When we walked into the small clearing that the trailer stood, it became very clear to us that something was going on. The first thing that I noticed was the fire. It was mostly burned down log and ash, but still fairly recent. There were also boot tracks everywhere. Most everyone that works there wears riding boots, which leave a cowboy boot looking print, while these treads look like work boots. Litter and cigarettes butts littered the area as well. At this point, we're starting to freak out, as it slowly becomes aware to us that maybe someone is here that shouldn't be. We carry walkies at work, but both of us left ours with the horses. I see a strange and indescribable look across Brenda's face. Perhaps terrified determination, and he looks across at me. Andronicus. We should go inside. Something is wrong here. What I wanted to say was fuck no. That's exactly why we needed to leave. But instead I just nod. Brandon nods back and flings the door open. Getting up the small metal steps in one bound, I close on his heels. The smell hit us first like garbage rotting in the sun of curdled milk, making me gag. It was dark inside the trailer, curtains and blankets covering every window, and I unthinkingly tug a blanket off the small window next to the door. Now with the light we could see inside. Trash covered the floor. We were standing at the door, still in the kitchen of the camper. The bedroom was on the far side to the left. A curtain was drawn closed. Brandon called out, "Hello!" loudly and cleared his throat. We both listened with cocked heads, straining to catch movement but heard nothing. "Stay close," Brandon said, and moved gingerly through the kitchen where he checked the bathroom and bedroom. No one. The bedroom held more evidence of recent living, sleeping bag, and food. The most chilling thing of all lay on the kitchen table. At first glance, it looked like a photo album. However, it was a plain black scrapbook with pictures of children inside. Strange pictures, not exactly pornographic, like pictures of children out of magazines. like child models you see advertising clothing. But all these kids were cut out and glued in this book with scrawled writing squeezed into the margins. Brandon was coming out of the bedroom, and I had held it up to him. "We need to go." He then held up a rusty blood-covered knife with serrated blade. Perhaps a combat knife? It was the size of a Bowie knife. We skipped quickly out of the camper and made our way back to the barn. As we reached the halfway point, however, a voice roared out from behind us. "Hey!" He sounded furious, rageful. We both started to see the man in a plaid shirt standing in the clearing and looking at us. He was like 70 feet from us. At the point, we both instantly took off to the barn and back to the horses. I have no idea if he chased us. We hit the horses and spurred them out of there. The story pretty much ends there. We went back to the big house and I got my boss. By the time we came back, the man and book were gone, leaving the knife and everything else. That was honestly the most terrified I've ever been. I shook for hours after it happened, and even threw up when we were far enough away. Who knew what he had done? If we had been in that camper for so long, or if he had caught us. I still have nightmares about it. So man in the woods, let's not ever meet again.
My mom grew up in a small town, and she has had quite a few creepy encounters as a teen in the late 1970s. One night, her mother told her that she had to go feed the cats, who lived in the outside sauna in the winter. She reluctantly went outside since it was such a bitterly cold winter that year. She would get halfway to the sauna when she would hear a man calling, "Help me," from the woods nearby her home. She got spooked and ran back to the house and tried to tell her mom that there was someone outside yelling help. Her mom told it was just the wind and to go back outside to feed the cats. She went back out and got about halfway to the sauna when she heard a man call for help to help him. She was positive it wasn't the wind, and this time made her mom come outside to listen. Her mom heard the "help me" calling from the woods. She called for her husband to go see in the woods to see what it was. Since she didn't think it was a good idea for her daughter and herself to go looking around for him, my mom's dad went out into the woods to see who was in need of assistance, and was stunned to find a man in a long winter coat standing in the woods near the house. When the man in the coat saw my grandpa, he ran towards the dirt road and got into the car that sped away quickly. I don't know what the man in the coat intended, but I'm certain my family doesn't want to meet him.
A couple of summers ago, my girlfriend and I were camping in Saguaro National Forest in northern Wisconsin. And after our experience, we do not plan to return unless we go with a large group of people. My girlfriend and I are from Chicago, so northern Wisconsin was our go-to place for R&R. We've done a number of hiking trips in northern Wisconsin and in the UP, but never to this area. We are not backpacking experts, but we have been to a number of national parks and have been hiking and exploring when we can find time away from work. We love getting away from people and relaxing in nature, but this trip made us appreciate the presence of other people around us in unfamiliar places. Our plan was to hike a remote section of the North Country Trail. The North Country Trail is a national scenic trail, like the Appalachian Trail, but it gets much less use. In some parts of northern Wisconsin, the trail is very remote, and the only access is via logging roads. We plan to hike 15 miles along the trail to a backpack shelter, spend the night, and hike back to the car the following day. We spent the night at a friend's house in Wahasu, and we set out early the next day to the trailhead. As we entered the national forest boundary, we were captivated by the beauty of the thick green forest. I drove slowly along the gravel, logging roads as we made our way to our parking lots. While we were driving to the trailhead, we passed a couple of people standing next to a parked truck on the side of the road. They appeared to be hillbillies, as they had rusted out, bunged up pickup truck, complete with Confederate bumper stickers. As we drove past, I waved and they stared back without returning the greeting. Friendly people, I thought to myself. After we passed them, I looked in the rearview mirror and noticed they were still staring at us. And before we rounded a bend, I glanced back into the mirror again and saw them watching us through the haze of a road dust. My girlfriend and I joked about the up north people, but we did not think anything of the encounter. Aside from those people, we did not encounter anyone else on the remote logging roads within the national forest boundary. We found the trailhead about 15 minutes later, after winding our way around the narrow logging road. There was no one else parked at the trailhead. A perfect chance to get some needed solitude, fresh air, and relaxation. After parking and making sure the car was locked, we hoisted our packs and set off on the trail. The weather was relatively cool, which thankfully kept the mosquitoes and biting flies at bay. We took pictures along the way, and we marveled at the lushness of the forest and the topography of the glacial moraine. After a solid 8 hours of hiking, we found our campsite. It consisted of wooden backpack shelter and a fire ring. Even though the shelter provided ample space for us, we opted to set up our tent in a small clearing about 100 feet behind the shelter. We built a fire at the sheltered fire ring, and I boiled water for our dehydrated trail food. As we ate, we watched the sky slowly turn dark. My girlfriend and I passed around a Nalgene filled with wine, and we marveled at how many stars you could see away from the city. When the fire was reduced to a small pile of glowing embers, we decided to head back to the tent. We settled into our tent and looked through the pictures we took that day. But after lugging a heavy pack for 15 miles and drinking some wine, I was ready for some shut-eye. When we camped at state and national parks, I usually wore earplugs. But that night, there were no RVs or other campers to make noise. So I closed my eyes and let the noise of the forest lull me to sleep. My girlfriend was very uneasy that night, but she normally had some apprehension whenever we were asleep away from home. I'm not sure when we were drifted to sleep, but we awoke to a bone-chilling noise. It was a pitch dark outside, and over the insects in the forest, I heard a dual thud. It sounded like someone was hitting two logs together. My girlfriend and I were wide awake at this point, and we lay slyly in our tent, hearing the noise again. Our old tent had a mesh windows, but the backpacking tent we were using had no window. We could only guess at what was making the noise outside our tent. We initially thought that an animal got at our food in a garbage bag, in which we left in the shelter, but that noise was too distinct, and it did not sound like rustling through food, wrappers, or our camping equipment.
Our hearts were pounding as we heard the persistent knock in the darkness. Unarmed and scared shitless, we did not know what to do. I would normally have carried a can of beer spray, but I decided to leave it at home to save on weight, against the wishes of my girlfriend. The knocking continued, but we remained still as to not give away our location. For all we knew, whatever was making that noise had already spotted our tent. After what seemed like an eternity, the knocking sound ceased. We lay in complete silence with only the dull buzz of the insects in the background. Then we heard it. Leaves rustling, a branch breaking, voices. We heard low talking in the distance. We could not make out what was being said, but it sounded like a couple of people talking in the distance. The voices continued for a bit, but not to our relief. The voices did not seem to be getting louder. Whoever was out there did not spot the tent, or decided to leave us alone. We sat in our tent for the rest of the night, adrenaline surging through our veins. At the first light, we slowly got out of our tent. I looked around in all directions to see if anyone was out there, but I only saw the forest and the backpack shelter. We quickly rolled up our sleeping bags and camp pads and put our tent away. When we got to the shelter, my girlfriend screamed in horror. On the entrance to the shelter, the wood was freshly cut. The word, "kill," was cut into the shelter wall, and there were a number of axe knife cuts where someone was chopping at the wall. I looked at the ground and saw a scattering of fresh wood splinters. After grabbing our food supply and garbage bag, we got the hell out of there. We were nearly jogging with our gear as we made our way back to the car. I kept glancing back over my shoulder and gazing out through the woods to see if anyone was following us. We were transversed, the glacial acres that we saw the day before, and we knew We were getting close to the car. We were quietly rejoicing as we neared the trailhead. We made it back to the trailhead in near record time, but something was wrong. The windshield wiper in my car was sticking straight up, and there was something stuck to the wiper. As we inched closer to the car, I saw there was blood smeared on the windshield, and a squirrel carcass was impaled on the wiper blade. Hair and blood still stuck to the wiper and on the hood of the car. I didn't bother cleaning off the car. We threw our gear in the trunk and I sped off without removing the animal from the wiper blade. As I sped down the gravel logging road, I kept glancing in the rear view mirror, but I could not see anything through the cloud of road dust behind the car. When we got to a gas station by the nearest town, I removed the carcass with a wad of newspaper, and I tried to remove as much dry blood as I could. I filled up on gas and we didn't stop until we made it to Milwaukee. This was the last trip I took to the woods of northern Wisconsin.